everybody, what's going on here? We can't let school get us depressed. After all, the reason we're in college is to have fun, right? We've always thought knowledge was.
Here's another musical from the 1920s, Good News, written by De Silva, Brown, and Henderson. This musical is set in the roaring 20s at Tate College, where football star Tom Marlowe falls in love with studious Connie Lane, who is tutoring him so he can pass astronomy and be eligible to play in the big game. This show opened on Broadway in 1927, the same year as Showboat, but though its plot was decidedly old-fashioned in comparison to Showboat's daring storyline, it was also a hit. Good News spawned 2 films, an unsuccessful 1974 Broadway revival, and a 1993 updated production by Music Theater of Wichita. It proved to be De Silva, Brown, and Henderson's biggest hit out of a string of topical musicals. It also presented something that you might find interesting called a timeless trope. A trope is defined as a common or overused theme or device, also known as a cliché. For example, when the story begins, Tom and Connie, our hero and heroine, are part of 2 separate worlds. Tom is the quarterback and star of the football team, while Connie spends most of her time up at the Tate College Observatory studying science and constellations. Quite forward thinking for a female in the 1920s. When Tom's participation in an upcoming football game is jeopardized by a failing astronomy grade, Connie agrees to be his tutor. And in the process, Tom breaks off his engagement to his popular and beautiful fiancée and unexpectedly falls for the new additions to his life, astronomy and the nerdy girl, Connie. Good News developed into the most acclaimed musical in a new wave of romantic musical comedies set on college campuses. Some historical facts. Good News is set at a time when the U.S. was experiencing many changes. With the end of World War I and the prosperous economic period just before the stock market crashed in 1929, young people in the U.S. were exploring a new lifestyle and time period. During the Roaring Twenties, young people were experiencing drastic cultural changes and found that many pre-war values and customs were out of date and irrelevant for the new times. And as a result, young people, or college-age people, began rebelling against societal norms and expectations that were forced on them from their parents' generation. Young women specifically were instrumental in changing the morals and values of their time. As a result, we have the women's suffrage movement. Women were granted the right to vote. Similarly, growing numbers of young females began attending college and more became visible in the workplace. Straying away from Victorian morals, young women were smoking, something only men had done in previous years, and drinking alcohol, which was illegal due to prohibition. In an effort to be more modern, young women began liberating themselves by altering their appearance. Flappers were the epitome of modern fashion. They shortened their skirts, rid themselves of restrictive corsets, and bobbed their hair. Young women chose shorter, looser, and boxier clothing that would allow them to freely move to the new energetic dances of jazz age. And young men, most young men were not enrolled in high school because they'd been drafted into World War I. In the early 1920s, however, young men were coming home from the war and looking for the next step. As a result, enrollment in colleges began to increase. Similarly, those who didn't choose college were looking for work. This influx created a younger generation of working and educated men, and it also increased the number of men who were marrying young. Young men fell to the latest fads, just like fathers. For females, the 20s were about liberation from social norms. For young men, the decade was about coming home and developing a new life. It was during this time that young men used their strength from the physical demands of the war and created a growing interest in sports. College and professional sports teams were the newest fad, and young men were often either sitting on the stands to cheer for their favorite teams or playing on the team themselves. All of this wrapped up into this musical called Good News. Hope you enjoy it.